Right now, you are aging. Every second that passes, your cells wear down a little more, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. You will get old. You will die. You've accepted this because it happens to everything alive. But it doesn't happen to one of them. There is an animal in the sea that grew old and then grew young again. And it did it without a single thing you would recognize as medicine. Every living thing on earth follows the same arrow. You start small, you grow, you peak, and then slowly break down. Cells stop repairing themselves. Tissue wears thin. The clock only runs one direction. This is the deal every organism signs the moment it is born. Birds sign it, trees sign it, the blue whale and the bacterium sign it. You sign it. There's exactly one animal we know of that tore that contract apart. It is not a monster. It is not even big. Fully grown, it is about 4.5 millimeters across, smaller than your pinky nail. Its body is a transparent bell with a bright red stomach glowing in the center and a fringe of up to 90 thin tentacles. If it drifted past you in the water, you would not look twice. Its name is Turritopsis dohrnii, also known as the immortal jellyfish, and is potentially the only creature alive that does not have to die of old age. Nobody noticed its ability for 100 years. This jellyfish was first pulled from the Mediterranean Sea back in the 1880s and filed away as just another small, forgettable species. Then, in the 1980s, a German student by the name of Christian Sommer was collecting tiny sea creatures off the coast of Italy. He wasn't looking for anything miraculous. He just wanted to raise some jellyfish in jars and watch them grow up. So he waited for them to die. But they didn't. Instead, something impossible kept happening in the glass. The adult jellyfish would sink to the bottom, lose their shape, and dissolve into a featureless blob. And then that blob would grow back into the baby stage they had hatched from. Old animals were turning into young ones. Sommer, along with Italian researcher Giorgio Bavestrello and their colleagues, kept watching until they were certain. In 1996, the team published it. The thing everyone assumed was impossible was finally real. So here's what actually happens. When the jellyfish is starving or injured or sick or simply old, it does not shut down. It resets. First, it sinks. Its tentacles pull back into its body. It loses its shape, completely curls into a tiny ball of tissue no bigger than a grain of sand. From the outside, it looks like the animal has died. It hasn't. Its specialized adult cells, the ones that had become muscle, nerve, and gut, do something almost no cell is supposed to do. They forget what they are. Then they become something entirely else. Muscle can turn into nerve, nerve can turn into stomach, the whole body rewrites itself from the inside. Scientists call this process transdifferentiation. Imagine a butterfly that, instead of dying, melted back into a caterpillar, crawled away, and grew its wings all over again. That is the animal's entire life. In about a day, the blob settles and becomes a polyp, the tiny rooted stalk it began as. From there, it buds off brand new jellyfish, each one a genetic copy of the one that should have died. And then it can do the whole thing over and over again. There is no built-in limit to how many times it can do this. For every other animal on Earth, old age is a wall. For this one, it's a door. Just let that sink in for a second. Everything you've ever loved will wear down. your parents, your pets, yourself. The slow breaking down feels like the most certain thing in the universe. And this one small animal treats it as optional. One man has spent his entire life proving this is not a fluke. In a small lab on the coast of Japan, a Kyoto University biologist named Shin Kubota has kept these jellyfish alive for decades. It is brutal work. They are fragile, fussy about temperature, and almost impossible to raise. He has watched this process happen with his own eyes over and over. Every morning he goes down to the shore and gathers plankton. Then he feeds the jellyfish by hand. He slices brine shrimp eggs under a microscope because a whole one is too big for a mouth this small. He's the only known person to have kept these animals alive and cycling for years on end. Lose focus for even a few days and the entire colony is gone. Kubota documented a single colony rejuvenating itself around 10 times in just 2 years. He calls it the most miraculous animal in the entire animal kingdom. He loves these creatures so much that he even writes and performs songs about them in costume on Japanese television. People think he's eccentric, but he believes that he's sitting next to the biggest secret in biology. But before you picture an ocean filling up with unkillable jellyfish, there's a catch. These jellyfish are in fact not invincible. They're ageless, but those are not the same thing. It can still be eaten by a fish or a turtle. It can still be crushed by a wave, poisoned by pollution, or wiped out by a sudden swing in temperature. Kubota once watched one of his jellyfish reset more than a dozen times until a typhoon flooded his lab and killed the entire colony in a single night. Sometimes the reset itself fails and the animal just dies like anything else. So it can be killed. It simply doesn't have to grow old. It has found the one exit from the single kind of death that nothing else escapes. The slow, internal kind. The kind that is coming for you no matter how careful you are. And it gets even stranger. While we were busy not noticing it, this jellyfish quietly started spreading across the entire planet. Ships pull in seawater for balance, then dump it out in distant ports, and tiny polyps ride along, invisible in the water. So an animal that was once just a Mediterranean local now turns up off the coast of Florida, Japan, Panama, and far beyond. They're so small and so plain that you can only tell the species apart under a microscope by reading their genes. Scientists call this a silent invasion. And here's the thought that should unsettle you. We've only known what this animal is capable of since the 1990s. Nobody has been watching any single one of them for longer than that. So we have no real idea how old the oldest ones already are. A jellyfish drifting in the dark right now could, in theory, be the same unbroken genetic line that began centuries ago, resetting itself again and again the entire time, and there would be no way to tell. However, it does no harm. It just arrives, stays, and quietly outlasts everything around it. There may be immortal jellyfish in the water near you tonight, older than your country, and you would never know about it. But none of this is the part that should be keeping you up at night. The part that matters is what this tiny animal might be hiding from us. In 2022, a team of scientists in Spain sequenced its entire genome and lined it up against a close cousin that cannot rejuvenate. They were hunting for differences, searching for the thing that lets one jellyfish cheat aging while its relative dies on schedule. And they found it written in the genes that repair DNA and protect its body's cells from wearing out. Here's why that should stop you cold. The trick this jellyfish uses to turn old cells young again leans on the same kind of cellular programming that scientists study in human stem cells. We have the machinery too, but when our cells try to do it, they usually go wrong, and that failure has a name. We call it cancer. Same machinery, two completely different outcomes. When the jellyfish reprograms its cells, it grows a healthy new body. When we do it by accident, we grow a tumor. This tiny, brainless animal has somehow solved the exact problems that kills millions of us each year. The jellyfish does cleanly every single time the exact thing our bodies can only manage by breaking. So it's not really a story about a jellyfish. It's a story about a rule you have always believed was unbreakable, sitting broken inside a creature smaller than your fingernail. For as long as there have been humans, we have built everything around one fact, that we run out of time. Our religions, our art, our medicine, the quiet panic that pushes you to do something with your life. All of it grows out of knowing that our time is ticking, the clock's running. We spend our whole existence trying not to look directly at the end we cannot avoid. And the entire time, drifting in the dark, murky waters, there's been an animal that simply never learned to be afraid. It grows old and shrugs and begins again. It doesn't dread the thing we have spent thousands of years trying to outrun, because for it, the wall was never there at all. You will never achieve this, neither will I. But somewhere out in the ocean tonight, something the size of a grain of rice is doing the one thing every human who ever lived has wished for. And it has no idea that it is performing miracles on a daily.